Good Monday afternoon to you. Thanks for being with us. I'm your midday host, Julie Grant. We witnessed the opening statements this morning in Missouri versus James Addie. That is the next big trial we're covering for you live and uninterrupted here on Court TV. The state and the defense both kept their statements short, sweet, and to the point, both painting, though, very different portraits of an affair.
Molly's cell phone that was found on the side of the road is the last link in the chain. See, Molly's cell phone had an application installed on it called DriveSense, sponsored by eSurance. It's a way that your insurance company can track your trips and how well you drive. And it tracked Molly's last trip that night. And that trip, 22 minutes long, corresponds exactly with the last phone call between James Addie and Molly Watson. That phone call lasting the distance from her home to her death.
The evidence will also show that wedding planning was going swimmingly, that he was participating in the wedding planning. In fact, on April 27th, Jim paid $4,000 of the remaining balance. He participated in the wedding planning. He was still paying. He was dropping off decorations. And that's where the state's case makes no sense. This is again, there's a wedding website. It's a publicly available wedding plan. Been planned for almost a year. And that's the alleged motive?
It is time for your daily sidebar now. Let me bring in Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands, Judge Ashley Wilcott, and Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae, all standing by to give us their take on what we've seen so far today. Let's start with the opens, if we can. I just want to go around the horn and see what you all thought of what the state and the defense presented very briefly today. Ted, I'll begin with you, if I may, please.
Yeah, very briefly, leaving you thinking, oh, there's got to be more, right? The states has to have more. They just have to. And the thing that I keep coming back to is that cell phone conversation that she had with the defendant. Well, where was his cell phone? He gave it up to them. It corresponded, I assume, with the number that called her on that 22-minute call. Or where was that cell phone? Was that cell phone tracked to the area where they found her body? There's no mention of it on either side. If the state didn't do any of that, or there is no evidence of that, I would have gotten up there as the defense attorney and said, "And you're going to be waiting for the cell phone, and it won't be." But you don't hear from either side, so I'm puzzled. Maybe the state of that evidence doesn't help either side. That's what stands out to me.
That's a good point. I haven't heard anyone say that yet. Really good point, Ted. Judge Ashley, I want to go to you next, please.
Absolutely. Well, I think both sides, Julie, did a really good job actually painting the picture and telling you this is what happened from each respective position, right? The thing that I noticed, though, is I never heard the state say anything about what he's been charged with or what the elements of those crimes are. And so I'm not saying that's the time to say this is all of those details that you're going to get in the jury instructions, but rather these are the elements and match maybe what the facts are that they're putting out around the circumstantial case to make the jury think about, there's the evidence that proves this.
I love that you said that, Judge. You read my mind. I was thinking that they didn't even touch on the law, at least touch on it a little bit. Just plant the seed, get it in the jury's mind, and then revisit it in detail in the end, as you said. Great point. Last but certainly not least, Julia Janae back from Minneapolis, Minnesota, in our Court TV studio today. Julia, what'd you think of the opens, please?
Julie, I thought that the Assistant Attorney General, Catherine Dolan, that she was effective, short in her delivery, but she gave a roadmap. You know, we're always looking for the roadmap in those opening statements, but her roadmap was for this love story that is going to be given to this jury through these witnesses. She took them through what this was like for Molly Watson. She's the one that's not going to be able to be in that courtroom and talk about how she was falling in love with the defendant, how she was ready for that wedding, putting together the centerpieces with hummingbirds inside. So I think that was really important to paint that picture for this jury, and they ultimately did hear about it. But one thing they didn't hear anything about was this murder weapon. That may be a big gap that the defense talked about that they'll have to fill in.
That's another really good point. Interesting you picked up, and I haven't heard that mentioned as well. Let us take a look at some of the testimony. Let's go witness by witness if we can. So first witness up for the state, the sheriff. Sheriff Danny Colston was his name, and during his testimony, he talked about how he came across all of the information about Molly Watson's wedding after doing a quick internet search.
I want to draw your attention now to some investigative work that you did after the Highway Patrol arrived. And you began talking about an internet search. Can you describe that for the jury?
Yes. So once we had identified Molly, I did an internet search to try to determine if I could find any information about her. During that search, I did find a wedding registry that indicated that she and James Addie had signed up for a wedding registry at Bed Bath & Beyond. And there's also wedding ceremony information on an internet site indicating that Molly and Mr. Addie were to be married on the 29th.
Ted, you were anchoring our coverage when the sheriff took the stand as the first witness for the state. What did you think of his testimony overall?
It was great to set things up. You know, he basically got big-footed by the Indiana National Highway Patrol. They took over the investigation, but they were able to introduce some crime scene photos and get the that initial response, set their case up, and he's obviously a likable, honest individual. So, good way to start.
Yeah, good way, strong start. And the next witness out of the gate, the 911 caller, his name is Glenn McSparron. He's the one that unfortunately stumbled upon the body of Molly Watson, but was able to give some testimony today. We have a clip of that. Let's play it. And Judge Ashley, I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
I went to take my daughter to my mother's, and I went to take the shortcut through the creek because we were both tired, and we came upon a pair of headlights down by the creek, and then I could tell there was another car facing away from me.
So the car drives towards you. At some point, does it stop and the person gets out?
Yeah, he jumped out and like come to the end of the door, but I couldn't get with all the glare and everything. I was having a hard time seeing. And that's when I yelled at him. I said, hey, is someone stuck down there? And he said, I don't know where they're at. It's going to be a while.
And you keep saying this person was a man?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us anything else about what that person looked like?
Well, he appeared to look older. I couldn't get a really 100% clear look at him. And then judging by his voice also, he sounded older.
All right, Judge, what did you think of witness number 2?
Well, first, like you said, Julie, he had the unfortunate, luck is not the right word, but to be the first person to arrive, very credible. Because listen, he has nothing to lose, nothing to win, nothing to gain by any of his testimony. He is just saying, I happened upon, here's what happened. I was concerned about the behavior by this man, and I just think that that's going to carry a lot of weight with the jury in the impression they have of what the defendant was like that night.
Agreed. Yeah, this guy, he doesn't have a horse in the race, and I thought it came off very well. They didn't get the ID, but that's okay. They got something really close. It seemed honest and authentic, and eventually they'll get there. I have no doubt in their case in chief. Julia, after we play this clip, I want to pick your brain about this piece of evidence. We have a clip from witness number 3, who's still on the stand, still under oath, the state trooper who was responsible for doing the tire casting. Let's take a listen.
If you make the plaster too thin or too liquidy, what happens to it?
I think it would just run more often or run more and would probably take longer to set up.
And if you made it too thick or too pasty, would you get a good cast from that?
It just may not follow the contour to get all the to get into the tread pattern and show everything that it needs to.
So the general process that we talked about for casting that you just described, is that the process you followed in this case?
Yes.
And were you able to take a cast of the print that you described?
Yes.
And was it the proper consistency, I guess, that it was neither too runny nor too pasty?
Yes, it appeared to be set up well.
Sure, many jurors felt like they learned something new, that you can take an imprint of the tire left there, make a cast of it. It's really fascinating stuff. Julia, what did you think of this witness so far? And then talk to us, please, about the importance of making that cast of the tire marks in this case.
Well, in the opening statements, the state said that there was a perfect tire print that was left, just emphasizing that for this jury. And it's a really big part of their case. It's what they have that they say links this crime scene to James Addie and his Mercury Sable that was inside the garage the next day when investigators came to talk to him. So I thought Trooper Nathan Schinkel, who's actually speaking and there and testifying on this, I think it's important evidence. I think he's walking them through this process, helping them to maybe understand there's this need the jurors have to want to see that forensic evidence or some type of crime scene evidence that would connect a defendant when they are trying to get to what is the answer in this case. So he's walking them through it. I think that's important, but there's likely a lot more that the defense is going to say is needed. They're also going to question whether or not this is actual science. And we heard that in the opening statement, that there's not enough there to definitively say that it matches the defendant.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had one of our legal analysts on the program today, Greg Brenner, made a comparison that we were talking about off camera on Friday. I know Ted will remember this conversation about, I think it was Michael Ayala who originally said it, that it's kind of like My Cousin Vinny with the tire tracks, and our guest said it on the air today. And yeah, it really is something. I said, kidding, but with some truth meant in the statement. It's like they need a Marissa Tomei kind of witness on the other side. If the state's bringing this in and really hanging their hat on it, we'll see what the defense might do to refute it. Let's just do some quick final thoughts on how we see this case playing out, maybe whether we'll see the defendant testifying. Ted, to you first, please.
I'm looking forward to the defendant's wife and daughter. They were brought up in the open, and the daughter has a conflict. He says he got home at 8:30. She was doing homework and said, no, my dad came home at 10. He took a shower and did some laundry. It's going to be fascinating to see both of those women take the stand.
Oh, definitely. Judge, your thoughts, please.
Well, listen, to me, Julie, this is a no-nonsense type of trial. What do I mean by that? There's not a lot of evidence. It is circumstantial, and I think that it's going to be tough for the jury to decide kind of what version they might agree to or believe in. But I just have to say there's not going to be much presented. I think it's going to move fairly quickly, and it is what it is at the end of the day.
I'm with you, Judge. Julia, your final thoughts, please, before we head to break.
Julie, there's a question that I want answered, and that's something from the defense's opening statement. They said that wedding plans were going swimmingly for Addie, but had he told his wife or his daughter that he was getting married in 2 days, I think even though he was putting money down, there's still this open question of what was he thinking when it came to these wedding plans and this other life that he was living. But we're 3 of 18 witnesses into this, so things are moving a little bit more quickly than expected for the prosecution.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in agreement with you. This is going to be a fast trial. What a tangled web we weave. Oh, this case is really something. Julia Janae, Judge Ashley Wilcott, Ted Rollins, thank you all so very much. We're going to head to a break. When we come back, we'll continue with more live coverage and legal analysis, and we expect the jury to be brought back fairly soon here from their break. They are on Central Time. I need to remind myself of that Central Time with this trial, so a little behind us in the East. You are watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.